I followed close behind. Soon he knew that something was terribly wrong, for the steps went on too far without any sign of the cellar floor. He stopped, began to turn, and said, "This is strange. What's going on here? What on earth are you—" "Go on," I said harshly. "Down. Go down, you bastard." He tried to push past me toward the open door above. I knocked him backward down the stairs. Screaming, he tumbled all the way to the first landing and the flanking archways. When I reached him, I saw that he was dazed and suffering considerable pain. He keened in misery. His lower lip had split. Blood trickled down his chin. He'd skinned the palm of his right hand. I think his arm was broken. Weeping, cradling his arm, he looked up at me, pain-racked, afraid, confused. I hated myself for what I was doing, but I hated him more. "In the camp," I said, "we called you the Snake. I know you. Oh, yes, I know you. You were the torture master." "Oh, God," he said. He neither asked what I was talking about, nor attempted to deny it. He knew who he was, what he was, and he knew what would become of him. "Those eyes," I said, shaking with fury now. "That voice, the snake, a repulsive, belly-crawling snake, contemptible, but very, very dangerous." Briefly, we were silent. In my case, at least, I was temporarily speechless, because I stood in awe of the profound machinery of fate, which, in its slow working and laborious fashion, had brought us together at this time and place. From down in the darkness, a noise arose. Sibilant whispers, a wet, oozing sound that made me shudder. Millennial darkness was on the move, surging upward, the embodiment of endless night, cold and deep and hungry. The torture master, reduced to the role of victim, gazed around in fear and bewilderment, through one archway and the other, then down the stairs that continued from the landing on which he sprawled. His anxiety was so great that it drove out his pain. He no longer wept or made the keening noise. What is this place?" "It's where you belong," I said. I turned from him and climbed the steps. I did not stop or look back. I left the flashlight with it, because I wanted him to see the thing that came for him. Darkness dwells within us all. "Wait!" he called after me. I did not pause. "What's that sound?" he asked. I kept climbing. "What's going to happen to me?" "I don't know," I told him. "But whatever it is, it'll be what you deserve." Anger finally stirred in him. "You're not my judge." "Oh, yes, I am." At the top, I stepped into the kitchen and closed the door behind me. It had no lock. I leaned against it, trembling. Apparently Fu saw something ascending from the stairwell below him, for he wailed in terror and clambered up the steps. Hearing him approach, I leaned hard against the door. He pounded on the other side. "Please, please, no! Please! For God's sake, no! For God's sake, please!" I had heard my army buddies begging with that same desperation when the merciless torture master had forced rusty needles under their fingernails. I dwelt on those images of horror, which once I had thought I'd put behind me, and they gave me the will to resist Fu's pathetic pleas. In addition to his voice, I heard the sludge-thick darkness rising behind him, cold lava flowing uphill, wet sounds, and that sinister whispering. The torture master stopped pounding on the door and let out a scream that told me the darkness had seized him. A great weight fell against the door for a moment, then was withdrawn. The torture master's shrill cries rose and fell and rose again, and with each blood-curdling cycle of screams, his terror was more acute. From the sound of his voice, from the hollow booming of his feet striking the steps and kicking the walls, I could tell that he was being dragged down. I had broken into a sweat. I could not get my breath. Suddenly, I tore open the door and plunged across the threshold onto the landing. I think that I genuinely intended to pull him into the kitchen and save him after all. I can't say for sure. What I saw on the stairwell, only a few steps below, was so shocking that I froze and did nothing. The torture master hadn't been seized by the darkness itself, but by two skeletally thin men who reached out of that ceaselessly churning mass of blackness. Dead men. I recognized them. They were American soldiers who died in the camp at the hands of the torture master while I had been there. Neither of them had been friends of mine, and in fact they had both been hard cases themselves. Bad men who had enjoyed the war before they had been captured and imprisoned by the Viet Cong. The rare and hateful kind who liked killing, and who engaged in black market profiteering during their off-duty hours. Their eyes were icy, opaque. When they opened their mouths to speak to me, no words came forth, only a soft hissing and a faraway whimpering that led me to believe that those noises were coming not from their bodies, but from their souls. Souls chained in the cellar, far below. They were straining out of the oozing distillate of darkness, unable to escape it entirely, revealed only to the extent required to grasp Nguyen Quang Phu by both arms and legs. As I watched, they drew him screaming into that thick decoction of night that had become their eternal home. When the three of them vanished into the throbbing gloom, that rippling, tarry mass flowed backward, away from me. Steps came into sight like swards of a beach, appearing as the tide withdraws. I stumbled out of the stairwell, across the kitchen to the sink. I hung my head and vomited. Ran the water, splashed my face, rinsed my mouth, leaned against the counter, gasping. When at last I turned, I saw that the cellar door had vanished. The darkness had wanted the torture master. That's why the door had appeared, why a way had opened into the place below. It had wanted the torture master so badly that it couldn't wait to claim him in the natural course of events, upon his predestined death. So it had opened a door into this world and had swallowed him. Now it had him, and my encounter with the supernatural was surely at an end. That's what I thought. I simply did not understand. God help me. I did not understand. Chapter 4. Nguyen Quang Phu's car, a new white Mercedes, was parked in the driveway, which is rather secluded. I got in without being observed and drove the car away, abandoning it in a parking lot that served a public beach. I walked the few miles back to the house, and later, when Phu's disappearance became a matter for the police, I claimed that he had never kept our appointment. I was believed. They were not suspicious of me, for I am a leading citizen, a man of some accomplishment, and in possession of a fine reputation. During the next 3 weeks, the cellar door did not reappear. I didn't expect ever to be entirely comfortable in our new dream house, but gradually the worst of my dread faded, and I no longer avoided entering the kitchen. I'd had a head-on collision with the supernatural, but there was little or no chance of another encounter. A lot of people see one ghost sometime in their lives, or caught up in one paranormal event that leaves them shaken and in doubt about the true nature of reality, but they have no further occult experiences. I was sure that I would never see the cellar door again. Then, Horace Dalco, holder of our restaurant's lease and loud complainer about albondiga soup, discovered that I was negotiating secretly to buy the property that he had leased for his shopping center. And he struck back. Hard. He has political connections. I suppose he encountered little difficulty getting the health inspector to slap us with citations for non-existent violations of the public code. We have always run an immaculate restaurant. Our own standards for food handling and cleanliness have always exceeded those of the health department. Therefore, Carmen and I decided to take the matter to court, rather than pay the fines, which was when we got hit with a citation for fire code violations. And when we announced our intention of seeking a retraction of those unjust charges, someone broke into the restaurant at 3 o'clock on a Thursday morning and vandalized the place, doing over $50,000 worth of damage. I realized that I might win one or all of these battles, but still lose the war. If I had been able to adopt Horace Dalco's scurrilous tactics, if I had been able to resort to bribing public officials and hiring thugs, I could have fought back in a way that he would have understood, and he might have called a truce. Though I wasn't without the stain of sin on my soul, I was nonetheless unable to lower myself to Dalco's level. Maybe my reluctance to play rough and dirty was more a matter of pride than of genuine honesty or honor, though I would prefer to believe better of myself. Yesterday morning, as I write this in the diary of damnation that I've begun to keep, I went to see Dalco at his plush office. I humbled myself before him and agreed to abandon my efforts to buy the leased property on which his small shopping center stands. I also agreed to pay him $3,000 in cash under the table for being permitted to erect a larger, more attractive sign for the restaurant. He was smug, condescending, infuriating. He kept me there for more than an hour, though our business could have been concluded in 10 minutes, because he relished my humiliation. Last night I could not sleep. The bed was comfortable, and the house was silent, and the air was pleasantly cool, all conditions for easy, deep sleep. But I could not stop brooding about Horace Dalco. The thought of being under his thumb for the foreseeable future was more than I could bear. I repeatedly turned the situation over in my mind, searching for a handle, for a way to obtain an advantage over him, before he realized what I was doing. But no brilliant ploys occurred to me. Finally, I slipped out of bed without waking Carmen, and I went downstairs to get a glass of milk, hopeful that a calcium fix would sedate me. When I entered the kitchen, still thinking of Dalco, the cellar door was there again. Staring at it, I was very afraid, for I knew what its timely reappearance meant. I needed to deal with Horace Dalco, and I was being provided with a final solution to the problem. Invite Dalco to the house on one pretext or another. Show him the cellar, and let the darkness have him. I opened the door. I peered down the steps at the blackness below. Long-dead prisoners, victims of torture, had been waiting for Nguyen Quan Phu. What would be waiting down there to seize Dalco? I shuddered. Not for Dalco. I shuddered for me. Suddenly I understood that the darkness below wanted me more than it wanted Phu, the torture master, or Horace Dalco. Neither of those men was much of a prize. They were destined for hell anyway. If I had not escorted Phu into the cellar, the darkness would have had him sooner or later, when at last death visited him. Likewise, Dalco would wind up in the depths of Gehenna upon his own death. But by hurrying them along to their ultimate destination, I would be surrendering to the dark impulses within me, and would, thereby, be putting my own soul in jeopardy. Staring down the cellar stairs, I heard the darkness calling my name, welcoming me, offering me eternal communion. Its whispery voice was seductive,